No, I was surprised to see that Duke had seen this / had any sort of relationship to it whatsoever.
It always surprises me what he has seen. It does not. It never surprises me what he hasn't seen, but it does surprise me what he has seen. But I feel like this should be in the lexicon, right? Don't they teach this in schools? Like I feel like this is a movie that you probably have seen even if you aren't a fan of silent films. Like this is you absorb it through osmosis. Am I wrong in that?
Funny enough, I had not seen this movie before. The only Chaplin movie that I had seen, and in the it was in the context of a film class, was Modern Times, which is
Okay.
great, but I had not seen this movie before last night. So,
Not even like scenes or
but that's just
stills.
me. Scenes and stills, yes, but the movie as a whole, I personally had not studied. I'm
That's
sure
okay. That's fair.
much smarter people than me have seen it within that context.
Mm. I just it feels. I guess maybe I'm thinking about an earlier generation, maybe an older one, where Chaplin was always in the lexicon. Like Frankenstein is one of those movies that even if you haven't seen it from beginning to end, I feel like you've already seen it. Like just
Hmm.
seeing every clip just out of order, like your brain will put it together
Yeah,
and you've seen the movie. This
I think it's
feels like
Modern
one of
Times for
those.
most people
It could be modern
for
times.
Chaplin,
It
but
could be, yeah.
who knows? Well, Screenagers, we're back. That lovely voice that you hear opposite me is the one and only Sailor. You know him. You love him. He's back. I can't get rid of him. He's the go-to guy for all of our canon entries that are pre 1940, we'll
Well,
say. So we've got
you're being generous though. It should be pre 1977.
pre 1970. Yeah. We have some fans of some 60s stuff, but anything before that, it's going to be you and me, Sailor. So I am happy that you're back. I am happy to be talking about this movie. If you can't tell by the title of this episode, we are talking about Charlie Chaplin's Gold Rush, or The Gold Rush, from 1925. Should be a really interesting episode. This will give us a really good chance to, once again, we'll talk about the film itself, but we're also going to get into a lot of just like film history stuff, which is always a little fun. Um, Sailor, listeners, if you've heard any previous episodes with Sailor, you know that he is a bit of a walking encyclopedia when it comes to film history, film knowledge. He has seen like more movies than any human being should see. Like it's kind of sick the number of movies that he's seen, but that is all really helpful because he's then able to provide us with all of this weird insight that we wouldn't get otherwise. Sailor, I feel that was a really backhanded compliment, but welcome back to the show, man. How are you doing?
It always it feels great knowing that your life's love is considered sick by other people, but that's fun. Just my love for film, I guess, is so much that it is sickening to other people. It's like this man just perverse with his love for film.
It's not so much that it's sickening to other people. It's just the number of movies that you have seen is
I have seen a
it
lot.
makes you a sick person. You're a sick fuck.
It's funny, like I think of like if I ever hung out with Chaplin, I would feel like the younger brother trying to get into like the treehouse, and they're like, "Get out of here, kid," because I feel like I haven't even reached where they're at, which is like shocking to most people how much they've seen. So like compared to everyone else, I still feel like a baby, but it's good to know that
No, man,
on a website filled with people who watch movies, I'm at the top of Everest. Feels good.
there's there's like they're film fans, and then there's people like you who are just like operating on a totally different level. Just being able to watch a movie a day or like close to a movie a day is something that even the sickest among us can't do. I know me personally, I just between my personal life, my professional life, and doing the show among other things, I just don't have the time to watch a movie a day. I would love to, but then I wouldn't have time for other things. Like, I don't even know what it is that I do. So maybe I do have time. There we go. I do have time. I'm just lying to myself. I should watch as many movies as you, Sailor. There we go.
Don't walk yourself into a corner, because no, I don't do it. To be clear, I don't watch a movie a day anymore. I watch a movie when I am interested in watching a movie. I can go weeks now. I'm not as addicted to the consumption of film as I used to be. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever I do go back, it does feel comforting when I watch something that really hits. This It's going to
Yeah.
be a short tangent, but I'm pretty sure I said on the last episode I was on, maybe I didn't, that I'm working through my 1001 movies you need to see before you die book. I think it's the latest edition. And I'm just checking off movies periodically. And I just watched McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And I was like, this is why I watch cinema. Like movies like
Mm-hmm.
this that really speak to me on like an artistic and emotional level, where I'm like, fuck, if I can make movies, I would never make a movie this good. And that's how I feel about Chaplin. To segue into Chaplin, when I watched Gold Rush
Nice.
in 1925, the way he was able to build gags with an emotional heart. I mean, this is the movie that he said he wanted to be remembered for. Like in his eyes, this was his magnum opus. I disagree
Mm-hmm.
with him. I think he has
Mm-hmm.
better
Well, yeah. What
movies
does
and
he know?
more important. Yeah, what does he know? I think he made that statement before he made The Great Dictator, which I think is his masterwork.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I understand it completely watching this movie why he would think this is the one, because it has his best gag, in my opinion, which is the house on its side. I think that is
Mm-hmm.
such a great set piece. And I do feel for the emotional core at the center of this movie when they call him the little guy. They don't call him the tramp in this. The little fellow. I mean,
The Lone Prospector
Oh, is that the
is his
version?
official.
Okay, I just rewatched the one with narration, and the narrator, who is Chaplin, keeps calling
Mm-hmm.
him the
Well,
little
okay.
fellow. So that might have been one
Sailor,
of the addition. What?
I feel like this is. I'm gonna stop you here, and I feel like this is a great place for us to sort of jump in, because I do feel like, because this is a movie that is a little bit older, so I think that there's a good chance that most of our listeners have not necessarily seen this movie at this point. So the more that we just jump around from topic to topic, the more we might confuse folks. So I do want to make sure that we're just pretty clear in the direction that we're talking, so that it's to cause as little confusion as possible, because again, I assume that there are people who are listening who have not seen the movie and are here because they're maybe interested in seeing the movie and want to hear about why they should see the movie. So before you jump into what you were saying, I think let's take a few steps back, walk us through, um and you're probably already getting here, but walk us through the three different or two different versions of this movie. The original release was 1925, but then there were some subsequent releases that happened after that, and there may or may not be a definitive version. But just so that everyone is sort of on the same page in terms of the different versions that you're talking about, walk us through sort of the history of this movie and the different versions that are out there for people to see.
Yeah, 100%. To be clear, I was going to segue into that rap. I'm the king of the segue. Y'all just don't have any faith in my ability to get you there, but I'll get you. I'll always get you there, baby. Gold Rush. Let's talk about the plot, and then I'll talk about the two different versions, so that I don't lose any more people going into the specifics of what the movie is. Let's talk about what the
Yeah.
movie is first. Gold Rush, like you said, 1925, and follows My version, the one I watched with narration, I have seen both versions, but that's the most recent one I watched, called him the little fellow. You're calling him the lone prospector. Either way, it's basically the Tramp. You've seen him. It's Chaplin's famous vagabond character with the mustache and the cane and the big trousers. He is in the white wilderness. He's in a snowy part, I believe it's Alaska, during the gold rush. And it's very hard to talk about silent movies because they're episodic. So I have to
Mm-hmm.
tell you the plot by kind of giving you the gags because there's really not a story so much as a story structure, if that makes sense. But so
Yeah.
he happens upon a cabin that is inhabited by a criminal and a man who found gold on the side of the mountain. And then after that, again, it's very hard because it's then this happened and then this happened. After the cabin shenanigans, Chaplin ends up in a town where he sees a girl in a saloon. Chaplin goes to another cabin inhabited by another dude who is out. He goes out for fox hunting, or I don't know. He just leaves with a pack of wolves, and he's like, "Take care of my cabin, feed my mule." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever. I guess this is happening in the plot now." But the girl he met in the saloon and him have like a. She's making fun of him. He's falling in love with her, but while he's falling in love with her, she starts to fall in love with him. And then the dude he met in the cabin in the beginning of the movie had amnesia due to a fight with the other fellow. He goes into town, sees the lone prospector or little fellow, and says,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, you remember where my gold is? Go with me, and we'll find it." They do that. The best set piece in the movie happens where wind blows the house to the tip of a on the cliff of a mountain, and it keeps like they have to keep shifting their weight in the cabin so it doesn't tilt over the side. It's a great set piece. I think that's why Chaplin thinks this is his best movie. It's that set piece. But they get the gold. Chaplin becomes rich, and the girl he met in the saloon fall in love. It's not a movie that you can spoil because again, there's those were like three
Mm-hmm.
beats in a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
Like there's very little plot. That's the
Yeah.
movie. The two versions, there was the original version in 1925, which was silent, which had
Mm-hmm.
title cards that would just tell you what was happening or a line of dialogue. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
1935, 38.
40. I thought it was 42. Or is
Ooh,
there
it's
another
that
one in
far
between?
up. Okay, 1942. I couldn't remember the specific date. Chaplin
Mm-hmm.
decided to re-release it into theaters, maybe coinciding with another movie. I cannot remember, but he just for some reason wanted that back in theaters, and he recorded narration. So he got
Mm-hmm.
rid of the title cards, and then every time a character talks or to set up a scene, you will hear Chaplin himself narrating the movie. I think they added something else, but that's basically the two. You're either getting the title cards or useless narration.
I believe there was also a score that was added, but that
That
may have been
I don't remember. I would have to. That sounds about right.
an
Yeah,
in between version. So
yeah.
then there's the 25 version that you just gave us a plot of. There's the 42 version that has all the additions that you mentioned. I think he also maybe removed a few scenes in the 42 version. But it's got that plus the narration that you were talking about. The the version that's available on streaming right now, and I don't know why we don't do this on every episode, but we should probably like let folks know where they can watch these movies. But there is a version of the Gold Rush that's available to watch right now on HBO Max, which I guess is now
Mm.
just Max. So there's a version to watch there, and I'm pretty sure that's like we can't call it a director's cut, but sort of an ultimate cut that is essentially the 1925 version plot wise. It doesn't have any of those removals. It also doesn't have any of the narration, but it does have all of the score. And then it's sort of a mix of a few different restorations that were done, some from the 42 version, some from the 25 version, and it's all sort of spliced together. So I think if you are looking to watch this movie right now, the version that is available and listed as the 1925 version on Max is probably your best bet. I'm sure there's also, well, actually, I don't know. Is this available on Criterion or anything like that, Sailor? Do you know?
I don't know, to be honest. I haven't kept on the Criterion channel because now they play
Hmm.
movies that aren't in the collection, so it confuses my brain. So I can never remember. I'm like, did you guys add this? Or are you just playing this? Because they've been playing
Hmm.
some wacky shit recently, and I'm like, oh, that's a bold choice if that's in your collection.
They've
I
been doing their
pretty
Razzies run recently.
Oh, that would make sense. I'm like, Showgirls. That's bold,
Yeah,
Criterion. Real bold. But I
that's
stand it.
why it's
Um,
like a month-long thing. It's pretty awesome that they're doing that.
I'm pretty sure you could also find this on YouTube, and I'm not condoning. I'm like, it's in the public domain at this point. I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
1924 should be in the public domain. Should be able to find it on YouTube, and that will be the 24 version. I guarantee it. Is
Yeah.
no one really cares enough about the narration. It doesn't hurt the movie in any way. It's pointless. You don't need it.
So, okay, so going forward, we'll, you know, most likely we will be talking about the 25 version. So, silent, no dialogue, no narration. There is some score, but that's the version that we will be referring to. Is this a movie that you saw as a kid? Was this something that you first came across when you were like going through your 1001 movies to watch before you die? When did you like first come across this?
I've always had an affinity to silent film, but I really cannot
Nerd.
remember. I don't know how I got there. It's like James Bond. Like, I don't remember why I fell in love with James Bond. Like, my father didn't show it to me. It wasn't like something I just like latched to it, but I can't remember when that happened. But no, I'm a big fan of Chaplin, Keaton, Harold Lloyd. I'll even go so far as getting crazy with it with a Max Linder. I'll throw him in there. I'm a huge fan. Even the Mexican stars of that day, like Cantinflas, who was inspired by Chaplin. There's just a visual storytelling that they
Hmm.
did at that time that we don't do anymore that I miss. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess this is as good a time as ever to get into the debate, the Chaplin versus Keaton debate. If you know anything about Chaplin
Yeah.
or
Well, do you want to
Keaton,
do you
go
want to
ahead.
do the debate first, or do you want, yeah, do the debate and then we'll talk about history of Chaplin
Yeah.
in more in depth. So yeah, go through your Chaplin Keaton.
Well, I think the difference between them is how they approached film, how they approached storytelling. Chaplin cared more about the emotional core of his movies, and Keaton cared more about the gags. Keaton prioritized the enjoyment of the audience. He cared that they left having a good time. Chaplin wanted to make sure you never forgot one of his pictures by having that heart. Like this film, for example, like this didn't need a love story, but he thought
Hmm.
the gags wouldn't be enough. Like he really wanted to make sure that you love this movie and then also remembered it more than the gags. But uh, so he's more precious when it comes to story. Keaton isn't as much. Like Keaton will change a gag if he messes up the stunt. He's done it before. Like he doesn't make the landing, and then he'll just add on top of that because it's
Hmm.
not as fun as watching somebody fall down. But he'll add like his trousers will get stuck to this, and then it'll just build on top of the gag. It's not as meticulously plotted as Chaplin's, And he also employs more of a cartoon logic to his gags that Chaplin doesn't. If it makes sense
Mm-hmm.
to a child, like drawing a hook on a wall to hang up your hat, and it working like an actual hook, Keaton will do it. It makes sense, so he doesn't let real life get in the way of a funny sight gag. So when it comes to that, I think where you land is what you prioritize more in a story, the technical aspects of it or the emotional aspects. So in that regard, I think Chaplin usually wins in the debate for others because he's so emotional and people really latch on to the love stories in his movies, like City Lights, for example, which is one of the best love stories ever told. Keaton never
So
had that.
I guess to
Go ahead.
just to just to take a quick step back, the reason that you're bringing up this Buster Keaton Charlie Chaplin debate is because most people sort of see the two of them as the two central figures in silent filmmaking, and being sort of, they're like the two lasting icons of that era, right? There are certainly other people that we can talk about, all of the French and German filmmakers who were working in the early part of the 20th century and late part of the 19th century. um you've been on this podcast previously to talk about Intolerance and DW Griffin and everything, or Griffin, right?
Griffith. Griffith.
Griffith, to talk about him and everything that he meant to to that era and beyond. But really, when most modern audiences think about the silent film era, you're thinking about one of two folks. It's Chaplin and Keaton. For most people, you probably think of Chaplin first because of what you mentioned on the front end. This Tramp character is one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, single figure or single character ever created for the screen. But both of them, were so good at using the tools of like this visual artistic language to convey emotions, to tell stories, to entertain, right? I think at the end of the day, both of these guys were entertainers, which is something that often, not often, but can sometimes get lost within discussions about cinema, is that this is a medium to entertain. And that's something that both of those guys knew. So that's why you're, bringing up this conversation of the debate of, do you are you a Keaton person, or are you a Chaplin person? Which sort of side of that line do you fall on? But we're obviously here to talk about a Charlie Chaplin film, not a Keaton film. So, Sailor, what do you have for us in terms of just like general history of Charlie Chaplin, sort of how he came into film, what he meant when he was working in film, and then sort of where this film itself falls along the history of his filmography.
Well, I think it's important to discuss the fight because it's important to both of their careers in the sense that if one or the other didn't exist, they wouldn't be as strong as they were. Marlon Brando is Marlon Brando because Montgomery Clift existed. And Montgomery Clift was as good as he was because Marlon Brando existed. Yes, you can compare the
Mm-hmm.
two and say, I like him versus him. I think it's a fun little rivalry within the film cinephiles. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there is a pretentious aspect to it sometimes where it's like, oh, you like Chaplin. I that I have no that's not my bag. I just do like discussing it because it does open up. It forces
Mm-hmm.
you to research because if you really want to be a part of the debate, you have to watch all of the shorts, all of their features, and what happened later in their careers because both of
Mm-hmm.
them were on top of the world and then they made one movie and it was taken away from them. For Buster Keaton, it was The General because that was a huge box office bomb, and for
Mm-hmm.
Chaplin, it was The Great Dictator. And he was labeled a communist. He was basically run out of America. So, and it like they Hollywood turned its back on him, so much so that in the 70s, when they gave him his honorary Oscar, 2 years later they nominated him for a song he made 30 years earlier. That's how much they were like, we're sorry we did this to you.
Whoops.
Because at a certain point he became beloved. It wasn't just like he entertained us. We looked back and we were like, oh, he was doing something no one else was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He is the Michael Jordan of silent film. I love Buster Keaton, and I love how I love the stone face, his persona, everything he's doing. And on a technical level, he might be the world's greatest clown, but Chaplin to me is the face of silent age comedian.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
but
It's hard to argue with that.
he's like the Hulk Hogan, like he's the face of it, or The Rock, like whatever is.
Yeah. More Hulk Hogan, I'd say. I think you're right with that one.
Well, I don't know who like what. I don't know if the newer generation cares so much as Hulk. Like The Rock might be
But
there.
everyone knows who Hulk Hogan is, you know? And everyone knows who Charlie Chaplin is.
That's fair. I don't know what
They're
anyone knows
they're
anymore. These kids today.
these kids, but you know, they still know Charlie Chaplin. You show them a picture of the Tramp and kids today still know that that's Charlie Chaplin.
I really don't. I want to believe that's true, so I'm going to. But if a YouTube video like rounds up some youngsters and asks them who he is, and they say Hitler, I'm a fucking never watch YouTube again, and I'm gonna cry for a month.
We should do that for the ScreenAge Wasteland YouTube page. That's a great idea.
It's gonna
Let's put
break
that
my
together.
heart if one kid says, "Is that Hitler?" I'm done. I'm done, Raph.
Well,
I'm
we just
done.
won't show them any. We won't show them any stills from the great dictator.
I'm like, that's fair, but I'm like, that's a bum. Clearly, it's not Hitler. What's wrong with you, children?
Yeah. Well, Hitler is a bum.
Oh, coming in
Hot
hot.
take.
Hot take. Yeah, got him. Got your ass, Hitler. You
Got his
bum.
ass, Hitler. Fucking smoked him.
Take notes, Taika Waititi. This is how you roast Hitler. Call him
Yeah.
a bum.
Hey, Hitler. Hey, Hitler, get fucked, bum. so, so where were we on Chaplin?
Oh my god, I shouldn't have taken a drink when you said that. That shit almost came out my nose. Get fucked, bum. Oh my god, Chaplin. Okay, let's get back to Chaplin. We're talking about
Yeah.
okay. Chaplin. It's also funny that the fight versus Chaplin or Keaton, that's a relative new thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been within like the last 40 years or so. You go further back than that, there was no debate. The king of the silent film comedy was Harold Lloyd. It was neither one of these two. Like Harold Lloyd ended his career extremely successful. The man who did Safety Last and no other movie you've seen, that dude like beat the shit out of them. So it's very funny that history is like put him in like third place. Like for the longest time he was number one, and history's like, yeah, get back. No one cares about you. So it is funny. But the reason why we talk about Chaplin, besides his Tramp character, he had a run that was unreal from 1921 to like I would say 47.
Mm-hmm.
He was killing it. He was crushing it. He did The Kid, The Pilgrim, The Gold Rush, The Circus, City Lights, Modern Times, The Great Dictator, and for me, Monsieur Verdoux. Some people think that's Lester Chaplin. I disagree. I think it's as good as any of those other movies. It's a real treat. But that is a hell of a run. Keaton doesn't have that run. Like it's remarkable, and it's also remarkable that he thought this was his masterpiece. Like this is the one he wanted to be remembered for, and it's a good movie. but like City Lights, Modern Times, like it's. But so I look at it through his. Every time I watch this, I look at this movie through that quote that this is the movie he wanted
Hmm.
to be remembered for, to see what he sees in it. And I think, like I said, it's the gags. We talked about the house tipping for a little bit,
Hmm.
and you've seen that gag later. Other movies have done it, most notably one of the Pirates of the Caribbean, where there's like
Hmm.
a chest of gold and Jack Sparrow on one end, and they have to keep doing shenanigans so he doesn't fall or whatever the hell. Keaton
Yeah.
did it first. I'm Keaton. Oh my goodness, Chaplin did it first here, and it's because now I thought about the house falling down, because that's also in a Pirates
Hmm.
of the Caribbean movie. They're just ripping these poor men off. But in addition to that one, which is great, he has a bunch of gags in this that are really good. I mean, the dancing with the rolls that you said, Johnny Depp also did in Benny. Just a thief, this Johnny Depp. Stealing all the gags. He did it in Benny and June, too. This guy,
Another bum,
this
Johnny Depp.
bum out here
What a
bumming it
bum.
up.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put the I'm not gonna put the first part of that. That's designated for Hitler. Get fucked. I'm just gonna call you a
Yeah.
bum because you look like a
Yeah.
bum, Johnny. I love you, but stop stealing from Chaplin. Then he does the eating of the shoe, because him and the guy in the first cabin get so hungry, and Chaplin boils his shoe and he starts eating it like it's what it's made out
He.
of, which is black licorice, I believe. And he
I think
starts.
that the title for that bit is called Thanksgiving Dinner, and he's like carving up the shoe like it's a turkey. It's truly one of the funniest gags in like any movie that you'll see.
So much so the Herzog's like, I can do it too, and then he did it. Check that movie out, folks. It's called Werner Herzog Eats a Shoe. Because he did that once. He ate a shoe. When a man makes a bet to eat a shoe and he loses, that man will eat a shoe. In addition to that, you were talking about giant turkey. There's a scene where Chaplin's a giant chicken, and that's a funny
Yeah,
gag.
hilarious gag. Also, just like an amazing piece of fade in, fade out editing that's used to like show that the other character, I think is what's his name, Big Jack or Big Jim,
Big Jim.
that Big Jim is hallucinating the Tramp character as this chicken. It's like, you think about how I think watching a movie like this where you're sort of like forced to think about the creativity behind the camera as well as the creativity in front of the camera. Like that is such a joy where for me, watching that big chicken scene and watching the hallucination come to life where again you're doing this like crossfading between the between the Tramp and then as he is, and then the chicken as Big Jim imagines him, and you're thinking like, how this is pretty early on in the history of filmmaking for people to know to use that sort of crossfade editing for this particular sight gag, and it looks amazing. You know, I think the same thing with the set piece that you're talking about. With the house tilting off the edge of the cliff. The one, it's a great gag because it's hilarious. And I mean, Chaplin is just like an all timer when it comes to physical comedy. But the other thing that you're thinking of is like, okay, Chaplin as a director, how did he know to set this up? What is he doing with his camera work? What are they doing with the set to make it tilt like that? Or is that a camera movement? Because again, this is 1925. So the technology that's available to them is pretty limited. And it forces the hand of creativity to a point where it's so astonishing that it like you can't be helped but to just fall in love with it.
I agree. There's an old saying that cinema was created by magicians and comedians. One came up
Yeah.
with the tricks to hide the magic, and the other perfected those tricks to sell a joke. And I think that's apparent here. When you look at the
Hmm.
technical limitations and then how he was able to come up with the solutions, when you are working at such a high capacity and all you care about is making someone laugh, you will come up with the solution. And that's all Chaplin cared about. He's like, how can I sell this to maximize a laugh? Like when they're eating the shoe, for example, anyone else would have just taken bites out of it, maybe put some salt, he would have done some business. But the fact that he takes the shoelaces and starts to twirl them like they're spaghetti and makes the joke that he actually is enjoying it, the joke,
Hmm.
instead of like just suffering through it, that's it's funny. Like you laughed because it's a testament to like, oh, he knows how to one up his own joke. Because anyone else would have just stopped and the joke would have been
Yeah.
they have to eat their shoe. But him taking it to like, oh, he actually likes eating his shoe, you're like, oh, this man's a genius. Like he knows how to one up it. So of course that's going to carry on into the visual aspect of how do I shoot this miniature and then superimpose myself onto this clip, like, and then like you said, the cross cutting of the chicken or the setting up of the bear joke, where the beginning of
Hmm.
the movie, Chaplin encounters a bear, and then the bear fucks off. 10 minutes later, during a fight where Chaplin is blinded and he's fighting a big man in a bear coat, the man gets replaced with the bear and he's fighting the bear and he doesn't realize it. It's such a great callback to something you totally forgot about. And that's
Hmm.
Chaplin. It's still amazing 100 years later. And I watch comedians today and I'm like, man, you have no idea how to set up a joke. Like
Yeah.
it's lost. It's a art form that we don't
I think
prioritize anymore because we don't
I
care
think with
about physical comedy. Yeah, go ahead.
jokes specifically, but just sort of filmmaking as a whole. And I think we spoke about this during our intolerance episode. And, there within at least the last couple of weeks, there was not controversy, but Denis mentioned that he sees filmmaking as a visual medium, and I think that we do have an over reliance on the spoken word when it comes to filmmaking and storytelling, and specifically to joke telling. You know, there are ways to tell jokes that don't necessarily just involve the words that you say. And that's so apparent in this movie because, like you said, there are setups and then there are punchlines, and none of them involve spoken words. It's all situations, right? If you want to like break it down, this is so much of this is situational comedy on top of amazing physical comedy. And those two art forms, I don't want to say that they're lost because there are still, filmmakers and people out there who can do it and can do it on a high level, but the over reliance on the spoken aspect of joke telling does to some degree take away from both the situational setup, the situational punchline, the visual joke, and just the ability to to be physically funny. Physical comedy is one of the best forms of entertainment, especially because it has no language barrier, right? So it's 1925 and this movie comes out. It doesn't matter where in the world you live. The jokes are funny because you don't have to know the language to understand the jokes. Like the jokes are hilarious no matter where you are, where you're from.
What I find funny is the people who have taken the most from Chaplin haven't really been the comedians. They've been action
Hmm.
stars like Jackie Chan or horror directors like Sam Raimi for the Evil Dead movies. It's very rarely that you will see. I mean, Mr. Bean, I guess maybe you can draw a parallel between the Tramp character and Mr. Bean. But
Hmm.
for me, it's like watching Jackie Chan. do similar stunts to Chaplin in these movies, and I see that as the best baton handoff than
Yeah.
just seeing Jim Carrey fall down, which is great. But I'm like, you're not going to evolve this, and I think this is how you evolve it, where you take those
Hmm.
same stunts, but then put them in the hands of someone fighting. That's insane. That's great. And then on the flip side of that, taking that energy of gag after gag after gag, but apply that to a horror movie, that's how you get the masterpiece that's Evil Dead 2. So the shadow of this, especially Chaplin himself, the shadow of him looms large. It's not just the physical comedians that pop up on Saturday Night Live every 10 years, like Kristen Wiig. It's, like I
Hmm.
said, Jackie Chan or Sam Raimi or Peter Jackson was also inspired. So you see it trickle down to people.
Hmm.
Edgar Wright has named him as an inspiration, especially in Scott Pilgrim, how he would design gags in that. Like, it's just phenomenal to see people look at it and understand that it's not just a clown, it's a master puppeting a clown. Like, how he
Hmm.
would design gags is just, it's unreal. And the
It's
fact that there
unbelievable.
was two of them, because we wouldn't be
Yeah.
having that discussion if there wasn't also someone as good, and that's Keaton. So the fact that they
Yeah.
were one upping each other, like, there's no doubt in my mind that they were the Stallone and Schwarzenegger of their day. Where
Yeah.
one would make the Predator, and he's like, all right, now I got to make Rocky 4, the biggest action movie. I made this, you make that. Like, we wouldn't be getting this influx of the best '80s action movies if there weren't that competitive draw. And so I definitely believe Keaton would see something Chaplin would do, and he's like, "Fuck, I got to crash a train. Like, that's the only way I can compete with this some bitch. I
With
gotta
this guy. Yeah.
I gotta take down an entire studio spending so much money on stunts. Like, that's how the general was made. He's like, I can't let this fucker win. I can't let him win, and it cost him his career.
How amazing is it that Chaplin wrote, directed, starred in, and composed the score for this movie?
Yeah,
You talk about a Renaissance man. Just absolutely insane to be, and he is firing on all cylinders in all of those aspects in this particular movie. You know, the the script, say what you will about it, it's really good, and it hits all of the notes when it needs to hit all of the notes. The structure of it is damn near perfect for a feature length film. uh the directing, he's obviously setting up, all of these set pieces and whatnot. He's lighting the sets and knowing where to put the camera for certain sets. And then his performance, I think everyone thinks of Chaplin as the performer, but his work behind the camera is equally as impressive.
he's definitely one of the best directors of his era, and up for
Yeah.
20 years, because he was still working at a high level when he did Monsieur Verdoux, which isn't going to be one of my recommendations, but check it out. A lot of
Hmm.
people just stop after a certain point and they don't check out his last four movies. You don't have to watch Limelight or the other ones, but Monsieur Verdoux, black dark comedy where he's killing off wives and taking their money. Chaplin always never afraid to innovate. That Chaplin, he's like, I'm gonna burn that Tramp character down to the ground. I'm gonna kill old ladies for money. I'm here for you, Chaplin.
Madman.
Yeah, I love it.
Absolute
But
madman.
you were talking about working on that high of a level, and it's within the last 30 years, I can maybe name five, but they're not like Eastwood has that, like, directed and acting in movie like every year for the last 40 years or whatever the hell it is. But he's not writing them,
Hmm.
and he's not doing the
He's not
music
doing
for
much
them.
writing.
And then,
Yeah.
but like Robert Rodriguez will direct, write, but he's not starring in them. So it's like it's
No.
very hard to find someone who's doing all of the shit.
Tarantino's writing, directing, and then acting poorly in his own movies.
Oh, poor
Spike Lee
Tarantino.
does a little bit of writing, directing, and performing. Maybe Do the Right Thing is like can be up there in term, but like still, he's not doing the music,
No.
and I don't know if his performing is up to the level of someone like Chaplin. We can argue about the writing and directing part, but like what Chaplin is doing as an all around entertainer is something that is so unbelievably unheard of in our day and age that it's like hard to imagine that he was ever doing this on such a high level across the board, really. And then you throw in that he's scoring it as well, which is just like, okay, now you're just showing off, dude.
And the music is great.
Yeah,
Like I
it's
said,
great.
it's funny that they just wanted to give Chaplin another Oscar nom, and they looked at the fact that I want to say, I think it's City Lights. It could be this movie. I don't remember. It had never played in Los Angeles, so it didn't get that 1 week, 2 week, whatever the hell it is,
Mhm.
Oscar nom run worthy
Yeah,
run, whatever the hell it is. So they're like, fuck it,
yeah.
just throw it in theaters for 2 weeks, and then we'll say it's eligible because technically the score wasn't eligible till now. So they're just bending rules of like, just fucking please, just get him another nom before he dies. But I'm like, I'm glad that they finally recognized this music because he was always good. He knew the
Hmm.
exact right tone to hit, whether it was a love ballad, so you can tell just through audio cues, oh, I'm supposed to, this is the girl he's going to fall in love with, so I got to pay attention. Or
Hmm.
a John C. like action tune where he's bumbling around and there's a bear behind him and he doesn't realize it.
Yeah.
Like, the man, true Renaissance man, did it
True
all.
Renaissance man.
Renaissance.
Renaissance man. I don't know what that accent was. Is I might be making this up, but is there any truth to Chaplin having a lot of resistance to the idea of talkies and movies with synchronized sound and stuff? Is there any truth to him being, kind of resistant to that change and really seeing the art form as being at its best when it was in silent film?
I think it's a bit of
Do
a
you know anything?
yes, I think it's a bit of a misnomer because he bemoaned the the advent of talkies. He didn't think there was any art in just having people talk. Like Denis Villeneuve said, it is a visual medium because if I want to hear someone talk, I can listen to a podcast, I can listen to a radio show, I can go to a play. The
Hmm.
visual aspect of it will be lost because now, oh, you can talk, I can explain my joke now. So, but no, I don't. I don't think he was reticent at all because he jumped in with it with 2 feet. Like Great Dictator has some of the most profound writing of its time, and he wouldn't have been able to do that in the silent medium because you would have to have kept reading title card after title card. It wouldn't have worked. So
Hmm.
I don't think he was. I think he was always looking. Where is the art? Where's art going to go? And if it's talkies,
Yeah.
then I'm going to adjust my comedy stylings. I'll figure out I could sell a line. So no, I don't believe that at all. I think Chaplin was always ahead of the
Always
trends.
ready to innovate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, this is going to be kind of a random question, but I do want to ask the question. Is is this one of our earliest examples of a western? Like, could we categorize this as a western?
Mm.
Were there westerns coming out before this? It's really out there on the frontier
There was definitely
during.
westerns that predate this. I can tell you that for
Hmm.
free. Like the famous one where he shoots directly at the camera. It should have been the second movie that the Great Train Robbery,
Hmm.
1908. I want to say I'm not. I'm shooting blind, y'all. I'm not looking at IMDb. I definitely could, but I don't rely on shit. I rely on my brains.
No, no.
So they were
That's the fun of doing this live.
exactly. There was definitely westerns. To consider this a western, yeah, I guess it is. Yeah,
All right.
like if
It's
you
kind
call
of.
this a
I mean, it
western,
takes
I'm
place
not going
in
to disagree with you.
the West, in the old West.
It
It
sure
wasn't
does.
old when it was. It wasn't old when it was made. It was maybe a little old. Does this take place in the 19th century or 20th century,
I think this is
or is
around
that
the time
unclear?
of The Revenant, whenever the hell that was. I'm not good with times either, my guy. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Late
All right. Again, that's
1800s, early 1900s, so somewhere in that window.
so it was maybe, looking back at a time like 15 to 30 years prior. So again, not the old West to Chaplin when he was making it, but what we would now consider the old West. So
That's
I
a
think
fair
we can.
observation. I didn't even think about that. That would still be current for some
Yeah.
people. Oh, then like yeah, this motherfucker might have hung out with Wild Bill Hickok for all I know. I don't know. It's old.
Well, we can call it the old West, so we'll call it a Western. Just wanted to clear that up, but it is also good to know that there were other Westerns that came out before this and around this time. So we won't credit this movie with inventing the genre of Westerns. That would be an unfair
I
thing to
was
do.
thinking, I'm like, is this the first example of man is hungry, man looks at other man, and that man turns into a chicken gag? Because I know Looney
There's a
Tunes
good
were around this
chance.
time. I don't know if this. I'm like, if that's the first case, I'm like, that's such a good gag. That's in so many cartoons.
That's a hilarious. That's an all-time gag. We can credit this movie with inventing that gag. Let's
I'm
just
just,
do it.
all right. Hey, historians, get the fuck out of here. This is facts now. This movie did
We're
it.
making the rules now.
This is the one.
This is it.
I'm planting the flag
The
here. I don't care if it was in a movie a year earlier. Fuck out of here. This is
Nope.
it.
It was this. It was Chaplin. He did it. Okay. The other question that I have to ask. So we mentioned what you think is his best set piece, the best set piece in this movie. You would say the uneven house gag, which again has been used over and over and over again because it is such a, I don't want to say an easy setup, but it does provide great opportunity for amazing physical comedy. So you think that that's his best set piece. I think the most iconic moment from this movie, though, is one that we've sort of only like brushed on. We sort of like brushed past it. Is the dinner roll dance?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that has to be up there along with the speech at the end of The Great Dictator. But that singular moment has to be one of the most uh, iconic sequences in film history. Definitely up there for most iconic, if not the most iconic moment of Chaplin's career. What do you have for us on that dinner roll dance?
I have nothing for you, Rev. All I can say is I can't tell you the origins of it. Like I don't know how he came up with it.
Well, just like how do you feel about it? Do you see it as all time iconic?
It's definitely in his top five. I think
Yeah.
yeah, it might be his single most defining image. Is even if you don't recognize it from this or even Benny and June, I guarantee it's been referenced more than that in TV shows and movies that I haven't seen.
Hmm.
But it is an iconic little rolls as your feet and you do a little dance. It's adorable and it's so simple. And a lot of the
Hmm.
gags in this movie, I mean, yeah, we're talking about a man turning into a chicken, eating shoe, house tilted. These are, I don't want to say high concept, but they require a prop or at least a sight. Some of them are
Hmm.
just a bit of physical comedy. There's a moment where Chaplin wants to get into a dude's house so he can eat. He's hungry, so he just pretends like he fell down outside, and the dude is trying to get him up, and he like lifts him up as if Chaplin was made of ice, like frozen solid. Like, he doesn't limp at all. And then he can't wake him up, so the man tilts him and then picks him up like he's luggage, and Chaplin doesn't move. Like, he has frozen his body in a rictus state. And I'm like, this is the most impressive thing in the movie. Like, this is insane. I don't know how you're pulling this off. Like, it's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I had to rewind it like 4 times. I'm like, how are you doing this? Like, this is insane. And then the guy sits him, and I'm like, is this a doll? Like, is this how he's pulling this off? And I'm like, no. And then he started to move, and I'm like, you're magic. How are you doing
He
this?
is magic. His physical comedy is amazing. In terms
like,
of,
there's,
I mean,
but there's a lot of
was he a dancer as well?
Well, I think they all started in vaudeville, so they all had to train their body to be rubber because they're falling downstairs at a very young age. They are taking bumps. So they have to get limber and loose like a ballerina, like, and it's or like a martial artist. How Jackie Chan had to break his legs at a young age to be able to do what the hell he can do. So yeah, they had to be able to dance and move. Like, they just had to have rubber limbs. I wouldn't put him up against the Gene Kelly, but I'm pretty sure that he can stage a convincing fake, funny dance. Like, there's a dance in this involving a dog that's caught to his belt. Then again, simple gag, but the way he delivers it is funny. And it's not something that I would have thought of. And that's what makes these movies great. So go ahead.
I was just thinking in terms of just like the body control that it takes to pull off, like the body awareness that it takes to pull off some of these physical comedy sort of gags. And then going back to the dinner roll dance, I think the most impressive thing, you watch that and it's so easy to just be captivated by how his eyes move, or the way that he tilts his head, the way that he's holding his shoulders, the way that his shoulders and his wrists and the rolls are like all aligned in each movement. And it's also precise from like move to move. It really, like, you watch it, and if you're just sort of like paying attention to all of those different things, it's easy to understand why that moment is so iconic, because you see that, and that's probably something where most people are like, well, I could do that. I could dance with little, rolls on my forks, and I could make that look silly. But most of us lack that total body control and total body awareness of where everything is in each particular moment to make that moment as special as what he makes it. Like, we as normal humans cannot do that, And I think that's part of what makes that particular moment so special, is that it seems like a low degree of difficulty, but if you actually intently watch it, you realize that what he's doing is so insanely hard.
It's clearly choreographed. Like, he didn't do that shit off the cuff. He was like, I'm gonna do this till I get it fucking perfect. Because it's got memorable dance. The legs be going. They got some moves, those rolls. And like we planted our flag saying that the chicken gag is the first tier, I'm going to say this inspired Jim Henson. Jim Henson saw this and was like, oh, puppets? Somebody said something about puppets? So Kermit the Frog, Chaplin, he did it.
Yeah, I mean, Chaplin's one of those guys where you can trace so much of just like popular entertainment over the last 100 years back to something that he did or something that he created. He's one of those guys. I'm planting the
flag, Raph. Chaplin created Kermit the Frog.
He's our original short king. Chaplin was a small guy. He was a tiny dude.
We stand a short king, and he's a short god. This little man.
He's the short god. There are short kings, and then there's Chaplin, the short god.
And not to get into it because it's not that kind of podcast, but just Google Charlie Chaplin sex parties. The man was notorious for throwing sex parties. This short king got it.
I think there's a biography on him that came out recently. I haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure they go into great detail about uh how horny of a just his sexcapades and all of that good stuff. If you just do a quick wiki search, you'll see that he had like 5 wives.
Mm.
So that should that should be enough to give you some insight into what was going on with him. He was a wild man
Hmm. Well,
for
he got that from
sure.
Fatty Arbuckle, who later in life was one of the big celebrity scandals where someone accused him of. Just Google that. I don't personally believe it because I'm like that doesn't sound right, but it could have happened. I'm just saying. But Fatty Arbuckle, also known for having huge, wild sex parties, he was also a huge star of the silent films. This is the last time we will ever talk about him because he does not show up in any movie in the canon, and people forget he exists. But he was great, Fatty Arbuckle. That's all I can say about him. All we're saying is your great grandparents were freaks. Just saying. It
All of
all
them.
it was
Every
all nasty. They were all nasty.
every last one of them. That's why they couldn't that's why it was good for these films to be silent so we didn't hear what they were what those freaks were saying.
Thank God. I don't want that filth coming out the little tramp's mouth. You filthy.
Dude, for the longest time I thought that Chaplin was American. I didn't realize that he was an Englishman.
Oh yeah. Did you not see
Yeah.
the Robert Downey Jr. movie?
No, I
Oh
have not.
yeah.
Are you talking about Tropic Thunder or a different Robert Downey Jr. movie?
A different one. A different one,
Uh
Ralph. Talking about the
Iron
one
Man
where he
2.
plays. Nope. Nope. I'm gonna give you a hint. It's called Chaplin, and he plays
Yeah.
Chaplin in it. That's the one. I can't be more
Yeah.
specific than that.
Okay. I'm familiar with the movie, but no, I have not seen it.
Oh yes, he's
And
really
yeah,
good in it.
I did not realize that that our good friend Chaplin was an Englishman.
Hmm.
Probably not the best thing to admit out loud, but this is a place to be open and honest. So I said it.
Well, yeah, that tells me you definitely did not watch the narrated one because you're like, oh, this motherfucker sounds like Pansy Boy with that.
Yeah. Well,
Yes,
I mean
Chaplin. Here comes the little tramp, and it's like, oh
the
man,
Chaplin, the Tramp character rather, is such a icon of Americana, especially of the silent film era, but also just like kind of represents the Depression era in many different ways for many different reasons. So it's really easy, I think, to associate Chaplin himself with deep American history, even though he was not from here.
nailed it. You did it.
Nailed it.
You said
We
that.
did. Well, Sailor, I feel like we've gotten through a lot of really great stuff as it relates to this movie. If we have any listeners out there, who still have not seen the movie, can't recommend checking it out enough. If you have Max, check it out there. I believe there's a version also available on Prime Video. I'm just not sure if it's the 25 version or the 42 version. Pretty sure it's available on the Criterion channel. Might also be available for purchase on Blu-ray from the Criterion collection. So many different ways to check it out. If you haven't, it's an absolute classic. You will definitely be laughing. You might be crying. A great emotional journey. If you feel any sort of hesitancy to check out silent films, this is a great one to start with. It's super easy, in and out, but still extremely, extremely engaging while you're there. Sailor, I feel like we laid out all of the reasons for why someone should check out this movie, for why it's essential and why it belongs in our canon. Do you agree?
I think we did it. I think we properly convinced people that Chaplin was the GOAT, and this is one of his best movies. And if you think
Yeah.
it's his best movie, I wouldn't disagree with you. I just personally, there's a couple others that speak to me more, but this is still an A plus S tier classic of the genre.
Absolute classic, absolute banger of a movie. Again, very, very crucial that this movie is within our canon because so much of what has come in film history after, owes a great deal of thanks to this particular film. Sailor.
Well, one last point. I promise you, if we still haven't convinced you, I promise you it's not one of those funny for the time movies. There's so many comedies that you have to place them in a box in time, and you're like, oh, it was funny for the time. No, this transcends the time in which it was made. It's just funny. So don't feel like you have to eat your vegetables with this one. It's fun.
Very enjoyable. Yeah. There's if you enjoy comedy, you will enjoy this movie. 100%. Well, I feel like we've said, we've covered it all. Seems like we're ready for our recommendations. Sailor, if you're ready, I'm ready, and we can jump right into those.
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So, just in case there are any new listeners out there, returning listeners, you know the deal. Sailor, you know the deal. I know the deal. But just in case there are any new folks out there, for each movie that we introduce into the canon, we also recommend 3 things to check out if you like said movie. Rules for those recommendations. At least one of those things has to be another movie. The other 2 things, however, they can be any and everything under the sun. It can be more movies. It could be a TV show. It can be a single episode of TV. It can be a book. It can be a painting. It could be a band. It can be an album. It can be what else have we done? It could be a restaurant. We like to get really creative. The connections can be as loose or as on the nose to the movie of the week. The only thing that we ask is for any movies that are being recommended, just don't recommend anything else in the canon. So for this, we can't recommend Modern Times or The Gold Rush, and we keep it to a strict 3 recommendation limit. So sometimes our good friend Duke, he likes to do a 2-for-1, although he hasn't done it in a while. He's been pretty good lately. We've been pretty good about keeping it to 3. Uh-oh.
Well, I don't know what's in the. I don't know if this movie's in the canon. If it isn't,
it might get you a suspension.
But I have a substitute if it's in the canon. I don't know.
That's different. A substitute is okay. So we've got the rules laid out. It sounds like we're ready to go. Sailor, you'll give us your first recommendation, and then I'll give my first, and then we'll go back and forth ping pong style until we've given all 3. So with all that, Sailor, what do you got for us?
My theme for this round of recommendations is all about gold. The theme of all of these movies, the central point is gold. So coming up first is last year's Sisu, a Finnish John Wick movie where you replace a dead dog with a bag of gold, and that's the movie. It's set in World War II where some Nazis fuck with a farmer who's just found a bunch of gold, and they shouldn't have done that, and they all end up dead. That's not a spoiler, because it's John Wick. Everyone's gonna die. It's a very entertaining action movie.
Amazing.
Sisu. If you haven't seen it, check it out. If you like John Wick, you're gonna love how preposterously over the top this is. It's really fun.
Amazing. That sounds great. Okay, for my first recommendation, I'm going to go with a pretty obvious choice. We spoke a lot about how Chaplin is an absolute master of physical comedy. There's probably not anyone in the game today doing it like him, but I do think that our best late 20th century physical comedian is Jim Carrey. Sailor, I know you mentioned him before. You maybe poo-pooed him a little bit, but obviously he's not going to reach the heights of Chaplin, but I still do think that he is up there for late 20th century best physical comedians. So for him, what I'm going to recommend, one of my favorite movies, a lot of great physical comedy from Carrey himself, is, of course, 1994's The Mask.
When you said 1994, I'm like, it could be one of 3 movies.
Yeah.
What?
So we had we did the Truman Show last week, and we spoke about just like how absurd it is that Jim Carrey had the 1994 that he had, probably the best year that any single film entertainer has had.
If he retired in '95, we like this motherfucker's the goat.
Yeah.
No one's ever gonna top him.
Like
This is it.
an absolute like beyond banner year. Just incredible what he did.
It's like when the John Hughes was like 1990 rolled around. He's like, I'm done. The 80s was as good as it gets. I'm out.
Yeah. It would have been like if Michael Jordan did his like three-peat NBA championships, but all in one season. Like that's what Jim Carrey did in 1994.
It's insane. And the mask of those physical performances, the mask is the best one. I think
of
it's
the
sorely
three,
underrated.
The Mask is the best. Yeah, is his best physical work out of the three for sure.
It's such an underrated movie to me. Like I think
Yeah.
we liked it as kids and we haven't really thought about it. I'm like, no, if you really look at it in terms of just being a comic book movie, I don't think it gets enough props for what it was doing and pushing CGI in ways that CGI we really hadn't seen a movie that used it like this. Like we saw Jurassic Park, we saw Abyss. Well, actually, Abyss came out after this. What is the other movie they used? Oh, Terminator 2. There were movies
T2,
that used CGI, but this really was like, I have to convince you this is a living cartoon, and he pulls it off.
Yeah,
it's a damn.
And
good
I think
movie.
the best out of the three, best showcase for Jim Carrey as a physical presence for sure.
And I wasn't poo-pooing him earlier. I was just saying that I think Jim Carrey is a genius at what he can do.
Yeah.
I just don't think any comedian can push what Chaplin did in terms of physical comedy. That's why I think it's more impressive that a martial artist took it, because then it can go somewhere. It's more funny to watch a house fall down on someone while he's also fighting someone with a ladder. Jim Carrey can't do that. I'm just saying.
No, he's great, but he can't do that.
No, he can't do that.
I hear you.
My next one. So this might be in the canon. If it is, then I have a Treasure of Sierra Madre. Is it in the canon?
I think that may have recently made it in our a little peek behind the curtain for our listeners, but there was a recent round of voting for some additional movies, mostly movies I want to say pre 1960 to get into the canon, and I'm pretty sure Treasure made it in that round of voting.
Well, either way, recommend it. It's great. I wanted an action movie, drama, and a horror movie involving gold. That kind of fucks my plan if it's in the canon, but that's fine. My substitute is not a movie technically about gold, but about black gold, Texas tea. I'm talking about oil. I'm going The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, a South Korean Western, all about three people. It's basically a remake of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, except instead of a pot of gold, it's oil. That actually might be the twist at the end, that it's oil, and I think they think it's gold. I think I should just ruin that for everybody. It doesn't matter.
That's okay.
It's you're really not watching that movie for the plot. It's 2.5 hours of crazy, insane action. It really could be about just dinosaur bones. It doesn't really matter what the plot is about. You just want to see wild, crazy action, and the movie delivers. The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. About gold. Nice. It's not about oil. I didn't say that.
It's about gold.
It's about gold. All good.
You saved it. I hope your third pick is Gold Member. My second recommendation is so we mentioned him earlier. He played Chaplin in the film Chaplin, and you know him, you love him. He's Robert Downey Jr. Recently won his first Oscar for a sort of mid performance, but that's neither here nor there.
More hot takes. Ooh. Put on the ovens because here comes that hot take.
So I'm not going to recommend the film Chaplin because I haven't seen it, but I'm going to recommend another Robert Downey Jr. movie because he played Chaplin. So that's our little connection piece. Um, Maybe one of his better acting performances, at least I think from early on in his career. I don't know if this is the movie that really like had him burst onto the scene, but I'm recommending Less Than Zero
Yes.
from I forget I'm not sure what year in the 80s. I want to say late 80s.
Yes. I want to say
Yeah,
87, 88.
that sounds right. But yeah, if you like Downey Jr., that's and you haven't seen it, that's a great role of his. Uh I think before he got into a lot of that madness that
Mm-hmm.
consumed his life for so long, but also is a movie about how that kind of madness can consume someone's life. So an interesting art imitates life sort of thing going on there. But yeah, Less Than Zero, check it out.
It is probably his best performance. I think we've. I actually think Oppenheimer was very important for Downey Jr. because he was becoming another Christopher Walken, Jeff Goldblum type of actor that is the persona. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Oppenheimer was very important for him to stop being Iron Man and to remind the
Yeah,
world, oh, yeah, I can act. I'm not just
yeah,
Robert Downey Jr. I think you guys forgot that. So,
yeah.
and when you want to go back and remind yourself of how good he can be, yeah, Less Than Zero is a perfect example of
Yeah, and Tropic Thunder, but I've already recommended Tropic Thunder in another episode.
that. The man can act. He's one of our best.
Yeah, great talent.
Well,
All right,
it's
Taylor, what's
the
your number
third one
three?
is not gold member. It's I wish it was something more fun and pleasant than when I'm like fun and pleasant like that, but it's not. It's one of the nastiest, darkest, bleakest, bloodiest westerns ever made, and that is Cutthroat's
Ooh,
Nine. Is a
ooh,
it is about a wagon with a man, his daughter, and seven horrible outlaws that he, as the sheriff, he might be a deputy, he's law of some kind, and he has to transport them to a city so they can get sentenced. But one of those criminals killed his wife. I mean, did a little bit more
mm-hmm.
than that, but I'm gonna try to make it. I don't want you to know how unpleasant this movie is. But killed his wife.
Yeah,
He doesn't know which one, but he knows it's one of them. So that's already a recipe for any number of horrible things. They want to escape, so they got to kill him, but they probably want to attack that daughter because they're all horrible pieces of shit. So he's got to
mm-hmm.
stay alive and a whole bunch of shit. Now, add gold into the mix because you're like, how the hell does this relate to? Gold is introduced midway, halfway around the midway point, and now watching horrible people now have greed. That's watching a bunch of junkyard dogs all fighting for the same bone. Shit gets bloody. Shit gets mean. Cutthroat's Nine. If you're a fan of bleak westerns like The Hateful Eight, this is a little bit beyond. So you'll
Nice.
never forget it. Not a pleasant watch, but I don't know what to say.
Well, I think you've said it all. That sounds great. I'm adding it to my list. The Hateful Eight was one of my potential recommends for this week, but I
Ooh.
decided turning it. I feel like that movie always somehow makes its way into like being part of like the 7 potential movies that I could recommend for any given any given film that we're introducing into the canon, but never actually makes the cut. So all that's a long way to say. For my third recommendation, I'm going to recommend an album, and the connection to the Gold Rush is this is an album from a band from Alaska. Not my favorite band. I don't know if you've ever listened to Portugal the Man, but their album Evil Friends is pretty dope. So if you like movies about Alaska and you want an album from some guys from Alaska, check out Evil Friends by Portugal the Man.
I like this recommend, Ref. Because your recommend is good vibes, and my movie involves rape and murder. So I think you won
Yeah.
this round.
Yeah, just listening to cool music is a lot more fun
Yeah, it really
than that
is.
other stuff that you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. I'm sorry. I want to take it back. I don't recommend it no more.
You said it. It's done. It's
I'm sorry
there's
I
no
did
going
this to
back
you
now.
guys. Like one person listening is like, "Yeah, that movie's great."
Yeah.
I don't want to be associated with that man. I'm sorry.
There's one sick fuck out there.
Yeah,
It comes full circle, right?
it's sick
You we
fucks.
I called you a
That's
sick fuck early in the episode, and now we're talking about you as a sick fuck for your recommendations.
this is the
All
kind of
right.
shit you get in the Chaplin episode, guys. See, this is
Hell
why you
yeah.
need to be listening to this shit. Y'all never gonna listen. Like two people are gonna listen to this. You're missing out on
Hey,
quality.
we're gonna get plenty of people listening to this.
They better. This
The
is a great movie,
we
y'all.
have we Sailor. Let me just tell you, we have one of the best, most supportive audiences out there. All right, in all of the game, our screenagers they ride with us pretty hard. It's pretty cool, and you know what? We don't thank them enough. So thank you to all of the screenagers out there who continue to ride with this show. We do appreciate it, and we hope that you're not turned off by Sailor recommending ridiculous, gross, off-putting movies.
It's the worst. But that's my gift to you. I love you and I ride with you. And if you do listen to this episode, which I hope it's all of you, I I respect you. Because I understand, like, oh, it's not a movie I'm gonna watch, so I skip it. No. This is the shit that you should be learning. Inject this shit into your brains. You need Chaplin in your life. And you need
Hell yeah,
Cutthroats 9.
exactly.
You need it. Balance your diet.
Sailor, let's run through the recommendations one last time. Boom, boom, boom. Before we get out of here, just in case any of those lovely listeners did not get a chance to write it down on the front end.
I recommended Sisu, Treasure of Sierra Madre, but that was vetoed because it's in the canon, so I went with The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, and Cutthroats 9, a Western for the whole family.
Amazing. I'm recommending Jim Carrey in The Mask. I'm recommending Robert Downey Jr. in Less Than Zero. And I'm recommending the album Evil Friends by Portugal the Man. Mr. Sailor Monsoon, we did it. We did it again. Another great episode of the canon in the books. So exciting. Any final words from you before we get out of here and wrap this sucker up?
I love you. Be kind to one another, and watch Cutthroats 9. Believe in yourself.
Do you say believe in yourself?
Stay in school.
Pay the teachers.
You know,
Yeah. Tax the rich. All that stuff.
Eat them up. Purge them.
Eat the rich.
Purge them up.
Follow your dreams. End world hunger.
That's it.
And thanks for listening to the canon.
Don't dream it, be it, baby. Be cool.
Yeah.
I'm out.
I like this I like the side of you. I hope from now on we only get inspirational Sailor on all episodes.
I will Google
going forward.
like hang in there, baby. You got it.
Amazing. Well, screenagers, there you have it. That's the gold rush. It's in the canon. I was gonna do a my name's Raph and that Sailor and do like a news team sign off, but then it felt weird, so I didn't do it.
No, do it. I like it.
But yeah, we've got nothing specific that I can think of out on the website right now, but there's a ton of great stuff going on over there. We've still got the YouTube
blow past my
going.
list I spent hours working on. Don't worry about that, Raph.
Well, you were too busy motivating people to actually talk about your list. So what's the list that people should check out that you just worked so hard
That's
on.
fair enough. You didn't say if I had any recommendations. You said last words, and I want to leave them always with words of encouragement. You're beautiful, baby. You got this. Recommendations, though, that's something else. No, I just did a 100 greatest Oscar snub acting Oscar snubs list. Really proud of it. I actually had to change it after I released the damn thing because I forgot the one performance that inspired the entire damn list. And it was high too. It was like number three. I fucked
Nice.
up, but I fixed it. Next month, we are Kane, I, and a couple of other collaborators are working on the 100 greatest controversial movies of all time. And then after that, March, April, May, I believe it would be May, I am releasing films around the world, or film. What am I calling it? I don't remember what the hell I'm calling it. Oh, foreign film sampler, 100 great movies from around the world. So I took a bunch
Amazing.
of countries, three movies from not every single country, but a large assortment of everything that's not America or Canada. Because there's so many movies shot in Canada that it's pretty much impossible to even consider them
Yeah.
different industries at this point. But I tried to pick a good grab bag of must see classics and underrated gems that best represent those countries. So that'll be in May. And then from there, we will see.
Amazing.
Believe
Absolutely
in yourself.
incredible. Yeah. I did read through the Oscar snubs list. I can attest that it is a great list, some great write ups. So, listener, if you haven't checked that out, definitely go look at that on the website. We'll be looking forward to these other lists that you have coming up, Sailor. There's a bunch of other great stuff going on. I think I was saying that we've got the YouTube page up and running still. It's going strong. We recently hit 100 subscribers. So thank you to all of our YouTube subscribers out there. You might be listening to this on YouTube right now. That's crazy. Um, not crazy that you're doing that, just a crazy thought that, that we have listeners out there who are on YouTube. That's great. We love it. But yeah, here's to the next 100, 500, 1,000 subscribers on that YouTube page. We're going to continue to produce content to put there. We're going to continue to produce content to put on the website, and we'll obviously continue to make episodes of the canon for your listening pleasure. We'll be back next week with another essential movie. It's going to be one of two things. It's sort of up in the air right now, but be on the lookout for it. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. We love you, Sailor. We love you as well. Not sure when you'll be back on, but we're looking forward to it.
Well, it's just
And
like the
yeah,
Criterion. I hope you guys are doing Showgirls.
it might be Showgirls, but there's a good chance that it's not. But there's only one way to find out, and that's to join us back here on the same feed where you are right now, and find out what movie it is that we're talking about.
If
So we will
if
see you
it's not
then.
Showgirls, I'm
And
gonna burn it to the ground. I'm gonna burn it to the ground.
until then, until then, we'll see you in the wasteland.